Okay, so we are now going to talk yet again, as we do every few months, about pay to win in MMOs. We're going to focus it a little bit around this thread here, why Asian MMOs are pay to win centered and why players get along with them enough for them to prosper. Now, I would say this is not an East versus West problem. I don't think Western MMOs are not pay to win. I think just in general, the MMO genre is pay to win overall. I don't think World of Warcraft's not pay to win, and that's a Western game. RuneScape is a Western game, pay to win. Albion Online, Western game, pay to win. I think you struggle to find many MMOs that you can say there are no pay to win elements to this, even if they're smaller than others. Now, why I think most people look at Eastern MMOs and think they're pay to win, but the Western ones aren't, or at least way to a lesser degree, it's because Western MMOs typically hide it a little bit better. And say, for instance, World of Warcraft, you can literally buy tokens on the auction house and then buy boosts to get the best gear in the game, the literal top tier best gear in the game. There's almost nothing you can't do in WoW that you can't just pull your credit card out and swipe to get, which is fundamentally no different than being able to buy the best gear in Black Desert Online, for example. I think the difference is that in Eastern MMOs, they put a lot of inconvenience in their games, and people like to call it pay for convenience. I like to call it the developers making the game objectively worse to trick you into paying for things, thinking that, oh, I've got less time, so I'll buy this. As opposed to what we should expect, which is the game will just be developed good, and then we'll spend money on things that don't inconvenience us and further incentivize them to continue doing so. But realistically, there's a lot of nuance to that, so let's get into it. All MMOs are pay to win. Eastern MMOs typically do things such as Black Desert Online, where they're going to give you a game, there's a lot of stuff you can do in the game, but they're going to say, do you enjoy horse breeding? Well, we're going to sell you a bunch of stuff that make it insanely more profitable, or essentially when you're playing without doing these things, it won't be profitable at all. You can buy X, Y, and Z, and that will make it better. We'll do it with cooking, we'll do it with alchemy, we'll do it with literally every single element of the game. Whereas in Western games, like, for instance, Guild Wars 2, you can basically just play the game and then there's a bunch of stuff tacked onto the side. World of Warcraft, you can basically play all the game, and there's nothing really as a barrier to make things massively slower. But you can just pay to skip to the very end, essentially. I think Eastern MMOs would have a much less shit rep if they literally just sold you gear from other players. Like, not them creating it out of thin air, but other players just being able to sell you gear for silver. People would still call it pay to win because it objectively would be, but it'd be no worse than World of Warcraft. It'd be no worse than these other games that already let you do that in just a slightly more veiled manner. So I don't understand why Asian entertainment culture is apparently so much pay-to-win centered. There is a culture around this, by the way, in Asia, in Korea and China specifically. I'm not going to say with broad strokes that this is everybody, but there is definitely some part of the culture which is like, I am a businessman, I have a bunch of money, why should some nerd who plays games for longer than me, who can sit and play for 12 hours a day, be more powerful than me when I can come in and drop my wallet? I should be stronger than him because I'm better in real life, like I earn more money. There is a materialistic approach to this of like elitism. That is definitely a factor. Is it as big of a factor as other things? I don't know. It's just a contributing factor, definitely. There is a cultural element to it. Games such as Black Desert or the upcoming Arcade 2, they look beautiful, they offer absurd content, details, graphics, animations. They're insanely good games on paper, but then they all revolve around pay-to-win bullshit wherein you indefinitely scale according to how much nerd you are or how much you pay to power up your toon, to a point where casual players are literally critters to one-shot in any context. You have basically, in this sentence, explained both the problem and the solution to the point where the discussion's already had in your own comment. Because when it's indefinitely scaling according to how much a nerd you are, meaning how much you play, versus how much you pay, that is the argument for pay to win, and this is the one that people will always make. I have money, but I don't have enough time, but I still want to enjoy the game. Now, what a developer could do is make the game just more fair and not have it be for money, but it's a business. Of course, if people are going to pay for it, why would they not give you the ability to do so? We've already set that standard, so it's never going to change. And this is not specifically, again, Eastern games. This is just games, full stop. If there's something you can grind for, or there's something you can pay to skip, if they give you both options, they could make the grind as fair as they want to. People will still pay for the skip, because some people have more money than they do time, and they value that thing the same as somebody who's going to grind for it, but they value the money less. So they're just going to buy it. I also noticed that gear upgrade systems are so close to slot machines, having to try for insanely low success percentages behind lots of efforts. to even farm a chance for said upgrade. This is true, and it feels worse. I've had the same problems with games like Lost Ark, and people have said to me, when you play WoW, waiting for that upgrade to drop, that's just a percentage. It's the same thing. It's RNG behind thinly veiled mechanics that make you think it's not as bad. I still prefer drop chances of items than what we've moved to with a lot of Korean games, and there's a specific reason they do this, and it is literally the gambling impact, the gambling addiction. When you're doing like Black Desert Online, you've all seen them. You played a Korean MMO. I need my weapon to go from +9 to +10, and it'll say like, 3%, or it might even hide the percentage, and then you click it, and it's waiting, it's flashing, it's doing something, and then it fails, and you're like, oh man, that feels bad. But when it hits, it feels great. It's like hitting the jackpot. This is designed like this for a reason. It's the exact same reason that gambling is so addicting to people. It gets its hooks in you, and they literally have people, like psychologists, design this shit to be as addictive as possible. I think eventually there will be conversations in government held whether this is like healthy and whether or not they should be allowed to design games this way. But until that, it's just how it is. How can they think this is the way to make video games? Because it is, and it makes money and people play it. Like, whether you want to or not, whether I want to or not, it makes fuck all difference. Like, at the end of the day, we can have a discussion, and it's interesting to have. And it's interesting to inform people and the people who have time to discuss these things. But at the same time, it is irrelevant, because for every 10 people that have a problem with this and won't play, there'll be one person that will outspend the potential of 10 of you playing with a more fair model anyway. The whales pay for you not to play. It makes no difference. They're going to exist, and you can just choose whether to play them. And can you extract enough value and entertainment out by not spending a bunch of money? Or can you spend a little bit of money and still get a lot of fun out of it? And if you can't do either of those two things, you're just better off not playing the game. That's all you can really do. Or actually, if that's how they still operate, it just makes me think that this model actually works on a huge sample of players for them not changing their methods. It's just common sense, right? These companies have made other games. These companies have, most of them, been around for 20 plus years that are making MMOs. They have the data to know what would be more profitable. Do you think Blizzard selling the WoW token are making less money from WoW than they did when they had, X million subscribers and designed the game in a different way? They're making more money now than they did before, but it's less effort. And the game doesn't have to be the literal pinnacle, the cultural phenomenon of what WoW needed to be making guaranteed $15 from each user at the top end. And that was the ceiling. They couldn't make anymore. Now, if 1 million people quit, 10,000 people will buy enough gold to offset that entire million people. That's literally how this shit works. How can players be happy to cripple such state-of-the-art masterpieces for such shitty monetization business models? Honestly, most of the people that are paying for these things, to the extent of being whales, and not just somebody who would spend, like, for instance, I played Black Desert Online for thousands of hours, like easily over 3,000, and I think I spent $500. And at that point, I've spent more than that in the last year on AAA games on Steam that I've probably played for 100 hours. Some of them I've not even opened. I've been like, yeah, I want to play that one, and then I just don't. I've almost certainly spent more than that on Starbucks in the last couple of years. So I think most people are just playing these games and not really thinking about this all too much, because they just see the game, they think it looks cool, they play it, they spend some money, maybe they regret it later, maybe they just have a good time and they don't really care. What people need to understand is you are literally in a bubble. Like, your perspective, you posting on Reddit, you watching this video, me making this video, we are all in a bubble. The vast majority of people that are playing these games, and this is the same for any topic of discussion you have on the internet or in real life or anything that's not like on a global consciousness level, the majority of people are not interacting with these things. They're not even having these discussions. Most people don't even know the discussions are being held. Most people don't care. They don't have time to care, and they're never going to. They come home from work, from their 9 to 5 or whatever, they kiss their wife, they throw the ball with their son maybe, they eat their dinner, and then they log on for 3 hours and play Black Desert Online in the evening. Or whatever the game is, insert game. That's why a boycott will never work for anything like this, because the vast majority of consumers simply don't even know it's fucking happening. And even if they do know it's happening, they'll get told and they'll think, I don't give a fuck. I just like playing the game. So it's not even about players being happy. The majority of people having this discussion don't like these things, and actually most of them just grim and bear it and just accept it. That's why having these discussions will never change anything. The companies don't care. Every single person who reads this thread, watches this video, could not spend a penny, not play these games that come out, and they wouldn't even notice. And at the end of the day, it's only going to be your loss. And to be honest, I've come to the realization over time that while I will still have the discussions, because I think they are important for some people to know, because some people will literally just not play a game based on if the monetization's bad, which is understandable, and that's why I do it, and again, because it's interesting. I do have some money, and I do enjoy playing the games, so if the game is okay, if I can get by without being a whale and you know, forced to spend thousands of dollars, I'm probably still going to play it. Because if I want to play and I'm having fun, then spending money on something is just what we do. If you're a biker, if you're literally into any hobby, you will spend money on it as you go. Video games are going to be no different. I would obviously prefer if all the convenient stuff was just stripped out, the games were designed to be good, and then people could literally just buy gold and buy gear from each other. Like, not inflationary, not that the company generates the gold or generates the actual items, but how WoW does it is generally just like the best model. You buy the WoW token exists and it gives you a subscription. The subscription lets you play the game. Of course, with these free-to-play games, the sub would have to give you something else. Some just like, you know, little boosts or perks or whatever, because that is obviously a finite amount of stuff, so it's not impacting the game crazily. Have the people who don't want to buy that and don't want to spend money be able to sell their gold to get that, and then sell items between each other on the marketplace that obviously have gold value. And then, of course, you can just buy the token for real money, trade the token with other people for gold, and that just seems fine. Is it pay to win? Yes. Is it any more pay to win than the time before when obviously trading was in MMOs still and people would just sell stuff to each other for real life money on player auctions or whatever else? No, it's the same shit. It's always been this way. Anybody who's played any of these games seriously, even UO, Doc, for all these like hardcore MMOs from back in the day, EverQuest, people were selling everything on player auctions, on eBay, stuff like that. Now all that's happened is we've allowed companies to take control of this, remove trading, remove all these like social elements from games, and then just make games inconvenient to sell you little boosts and shit. I think that's the biggest problem, and not the fact that they're pay to win. I think pay to win it's always been there, it's always going to be there, and you just have to decide what is an acceptable level for you. So the top comment says, y'all keep complaining about pay to win games being popular, yet y'all keep playing it. To be honest, I don't think most people complaining are playing them, to be honest. It seems like a lot of people that take this hardline stance of pay to win just don't play the games. 5 out of 6 most popular MMOs are considered pay to win in the West. 2 of them, BDO and Lost Ark, are considered pay to win even in Korea. Face it, pay to win MMOs will continue as the average age of gamers becomes older. Adults have real life responsibilities and can't play for 4+ hours a day. They'd rather spend $100 a month than grind for an extra 100 hours a month. It's sad, but it's the reality. Pay to win is here to stay. I think this is the problem, and also sort of just the same answer I gave earlier. Realistically, adults should expect companies to not make it so that you need to spend 100 hours a month grinding and not sell you the solution to that, but just give you like, oh, you've not logged in for a while, here are some boosts and stuff like that, and just allow you to catch up, or design the game around not having crazy vertical progression. But at the same time, I also can't complain, because this is literally what people have accepted and this is how they play games. But it isn't a chicken and egg discussion. It's basically the developers have introduced this when they could have introduced it in a different way for non-cash money. And then there is a lot of like people repeating the same things I've just said here. Like, for the people repulsed by it, there's going to be somebody else that's going to pay. And at the end of the day, I do think we are spoiled as MMO gamers and gamers in general with how much choice we have. Expecting to be able to play an MMO nowadays, where people don't even want to buy a box price game, and then people complain if there's other monetization in the game, and it's like, guys, I understand, I want to go back to the golden era too, but I live in reality and it's never going to happen, and you can't complain about every form of monetization ever. I mean, you can, but you're wasting your fucking time, and it's also kind of dumb. I remember playing MMOs for years and years when it was box price, sub model, and people still complained the whole time that they didn't have money to pay for the sub, they didn't have a credit card, and then free-to-play came, and it's like, how do you think they're going to monetize free-to-play? If they couldn't do sub-based because they needed to reach a larger audience and people were complaining about it, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to sell things that people are going to buy, and they're going to have to subsidize free-to-play players with paying players, because that's the only way the game continues to be made. In every sense of the discussion, we did this to ourselves. Especially because whenever an indie developer starts up an MMO and says like, oh, this is coming out when we're not going to be pay to win and we're going to have submodel, all of the top comments are people saying, "No, I'm not going to pay for a submodel." Like, I've seen it dozens of times by this stage. So it's literally a situation that nobody can win. We just have to accept what we've got, and you have to make that decision. Is this game good enough? Is this game fun enough that I can pay and play for a certain amount of time and get my money's worth? And if you can't, don't play the games. And if you can, cool, that's it. I think it's worth discussing for every individual game, like how bad is it as a casual player? How much does it impact the gameplay? Is it as bad as BDO used to be? I think BDO is way better than it was originally, but they still do lean heavily. And this is, again, the big problem with the Eastern games mostly, are not just skips, but literally be inconvenienced if you don't pay. This is slower. This is worse. This is way less efficient. If it was literally just buy gear, at this point, I couldn't fucking care less about it, to be honest. Because I'll just play the game, and then people are better gear than me. And hopefully the game has content that's either equalized, or people around me is generally not in the best gear, because why would the best geared people be in that region of the game? It's like when I'm doing a World of Warcraft raid, I don't have to think about somebody that's doing Mythic that has 30 item level higher than me, because the fuck relevance does it have to my gameplay? Obviously, with the game being PvP, maybe somebody's going to show up and spank your ass, but I will make this same argument every single time, which is if somebody played the game for 12 hours a day and had the same gear as you, but you played 2 hours a day, they're probably going to beat your ass just as much as the person who spends $1,000 a month more than you, because that's just how skill works. It's like if somebody plays 5,000 hours of Dota and you play 100 hours of Dota, they're probably going to beat you. Like, it's just how it is. So the point of that is people will either outskill you or they'll outpay you, but they're going to do one of those. And if you can't do either and you're just a pure casual, then hopefully the game has casual content or there's casual games for you to play. It's just like, it's a merry-go-round of discussion. We just go around in circles because it always comes back to these same points. There's never going to be a game that is going to be fair all the time while you're playing it where skill or money doesn't matter. And generally if you play, and there is going to be exceptions to the rule where you're the 40-year-old dad who has 2 kids and comes home to his wife and plays 3 hours every single week, but you're actually in the top 1% of players skill-wise and you're really good and you could be even better if you played more. But for the vast majority of people making this argument, that's not you. You don't have time to put into the game, you're not good at the game, you don't have the money to put into the game. So the discussion about, oh, if somebody pays more money than me, they're going to be better than me, is kind of redundant because they would be better than you because they played more than you anyways. So yeah, there we go. Thanks for watching as always. We'll have this discussion again as it comes up, as it always does. Probably when Throne of Liberty comes out, because the cash shopping, that's probably going to be pretty bad. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time. Peace out.